We live in the world of instant everything, instant information. You can go online, you can order a product, it's at your door in 3 hours, Instacart. We don't live in a world where we want to wait for anything. And I think that makes it even more challenging for people now because they don't realize this journey, this fight that you're about to go through, if you are dealing with this, is not going to be overnight. It is not going to be.
This is an AWA Collective production. You're listening to the All In Wellness Approach podcast. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Aubrey.
We're the bridge between knowing better
and actually doing better.
From empowering information
to real life practical application.
This is your wellness, your life. So just one question.
Are you ready to go all in? Well, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
I put some work into it, and now this is going to be our home for the podcast. And
I love it.
Glad to have you in
Beautiful.
space with us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Tell us who you are, and I would love to talk about how we met.
Yep.
So if you want to, everyone, welcome Dan to the podcast.
So Dan Stein,
Yeah.
Originally from Wisconsin, and moved to California in my mid-20s, about 12, 13 years there, and then moved to Texas recently, about 3 years ago, moved to Austin, Texas to be closer to family. Built a house out here, was part of that kind of SoCal mass migration, and been enjoying it since, like I said, the 3 years have flown by. So I'm 42 years old, single, no kids. I had a dog for many, many years. Miss my dog. She was a sweetheart. So, now I'm just kind of working and enjoying life as much as I can.
We met, I was trying to figure out the year.
Gosh, I want to say it was probably, so I was still at Google at the time. So it would have been, I think 2013, 2014. It was definitely over 10 years ago, which is crazy.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to remember, because how did we get started with concrete?
Yeah.
And what I remember about that was I was working for Google, and I had gone to the Arnold for Google, actually. So like part of my job was like I was selling advertising and setting up ad campaigns for supplement companies.
Yeah.
And so we met with Eric and Jim and John to pitch them on Google AdWords. And we just hit it off. They were just the nicest guys. And I think I texted him the next day. And as a joke, I was like, oh, if you guys ever need help in your booth, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help out. Next thing I knew, they were like, well, next year for sure. Let's have you come do, booth work next year. And I was like, all right. That's how I remember it was Google. So it was definitely 2013, 2014, one of those two.
That's crazy. I love, because I thought I knew this story, but now I'm learning too. So this is fun for me. So through Google, you got involved with concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you were shown in Men's Health magazine for your story, for your battle with anorexia. So explain kind of how that opportunity with Men's Health came in.
Yeah. So I don't know if they do it anymore, but like back in the day, a Men's Health magazine, I guess when people bought magazines more often, they would do this, called the Ultimate Guy Contest. And so essentially what it was is every single year they would have this contest, and you could enter, and the winner would be put on the cover of Men's Health magazine. So, my whole thing was I filled out the entry form, submitted it, and obviously didn't get selected for the cover. But about like a year after the first year I entered, I got reached out to, and it was by one of the, one of the writers at the magazine. He said, hey, I came across your submission and your story really resonated with me. I want to work on a story about, body image issues in men. Would you be interested in sharing your story with Men's Health magazine? And I was like, sure, that sounds great. And so it started off, he did just a brief online article, and this came out I think 2015 is when this came out. It was on the website, very, very brief, wasn't really super in depth. And then 6 months later, he contacted me again, same writer, and he said, hey, my editor saw the online article. He wants to do a more in-depth article for the actual magazine with the potential, I'm pitching him on it being a cover story where we would put you on the cover. So I'm 32 years old. I'm like, oh gosh, that sounds amazing. Can you imagine what my life would be like if all of a sudden I'm on Men's Health magazine? Geez, that'd be so cool. So it turns out they ended up going with The Rock instead for the cover, which again, can't fault them on that.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love The Rock? And so, but they ended up doing a long form article. So basically they interviewed me, and then
a whole page.
Yeah. It was 2 whole pages. But then they also wanted to do a video series. So they were starting this video series on Facebook. I think it was called How I Got Healthy. And so they sent a camera crew to my house, and they spent an entire day with me. And this is when I was living in Los Angeles, working at a Gold's Gym in Venice. And so, they showed up at 5 a.m. They just literally wanted to follow me through my day. And so I work out in the morning super early. And so I roll into Gold's Gym Venice, which it's the mecca of bodybuilding. So if you've
Yeah.
ever worked out there, it's a scene. So I roll in at 6 a.m. with this professional camera crew. I'm like, this is super uncomfortable for me. Like I don't, I don't like an entourage or anything like that. Like I'm just a regular guy. And so we shoot my workout. They follow me around all day. We shoot all around Venice, whatever. And so this story ends up going on their platform, and it was the most viewed episode of this series by like 3x. Most of the other videos I think got like 250 to 350,000 views. Mine was over 1 million. And so, I mean, for me, like I had never experienced like having my story shared broadly like that. Like I'm always very open about it, and I have no problem discussing it. But like I had never seen it like put out into like the world. And so it was very cool. I mean, I had people come up to me at my gym in LA and say they'd seen the story on Men's Health, and they thanked me for sharing. You obviously had this is 2016, so still kind of early days of like Instagram and stuff like that. So like we hadn't gotten, I think, to where it's today. But like, you still had people who were commenting, great things, and you had the people who were the trolls, right? Who were saying like really mean, hateful things. And so, but it was a very unique experience. I'm very thankful to Men's Health magazine for doing that. I still have the actual, magazine that I'm in to this day. Like I'll have that probably for the rest of my life.
So kind of take us back to kind of your origin story of this.
Yeah. So, going back to high school, I was a little bit overweight in high school. I wouldn't say I was like obese. I think husky was the word that was thrown around a lot. And so, but like, so I kind of went through high school just, I wasn't really working out. I wasn't thinking about what I was eating, anything like that. I was a little bit overweight. And so, I graduate school, I go to college. And I made this decision when I went to college. University of Minnesota is where I decided to go. Like I said, I grew up in Wisconsin. And so, I told myself, like, I'm gonna get in shape. Like I want to get in better shape. My really good friend, Adrian, my best friend in high school, played sports all throughout high school. He was a football player, tennis, and he was in shape and athletic and stuff like that. Being around him and having him be my best friend was constantly kind of seeing how women responded to him, girls responded to him. And for me, I was like, oh, this seems kind of cool. Like if I could just get a little bit thinner, I can have more friends, I can get more attention from girls. And so I started working out when I got to University of Minnesota. Was mostly doing like cardio, so a lot of running, not like super long distance, couple mile runs here and there. And then I would occasionally go to the gym, although I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of there, going through the motions, watching other people, kind of like, oh, I'll go do that. What that guy just did.
Right.
No plan or anything like that. And I remember I lost about 15 pounds, probably from like when I got to college as a freshman to like when I went home for Thanksgiving for the first time.
So you did the reverse. Instead of the freshman 15
exactly, correct. Yes.
15.
And so I remember going home for Thanksgiving and seeing people I hadn't seen in a while. I went to college in 2001. So this is pre-social media. So this was like when you went home, you hadn't seen people for 3 to 4 months,
Right.
And I just remember people seeing me having lost 15 pounds and like just being like, oh my gosh, you look so great. Like, wow, look at you. You look, you've been working out and stuff like that. And I had never really experienced that before. No one had ever really complimented me on like my physical appearance. Who doesn't like to be complimented on their physical appearance? I remember going back to college and saying, I like this. Like, I like this. I want to like focus more on this. And so I spent the rest of the year just kind of continuing to do what I was doing. I went home for the summer, and it was my sophomore year of college. I went back to University of Minnesota, and I remember vividly kind of the moment that it really kind of started to set in for me was I got back to college, and I had probably lost about 30 to 40 pounds. So I probably went from like low 200s down to like 170-ish. And again, I would call myself, skinny. I didn't have muscles or anything like that. I really, again, wasn't thinking about that kind of stuff. But I remember being back at school my sophomore year, and I was sitting out on kind of the quad lawn, right? And I was with my roommate, and I see a bunch of football players come out. The amount of attention they got was something I was like, wow, look at that. Like these guys are walking down the quad, and like every guy and girl is like looking at these guys. I was like, all right, I wanna look like that. Like I'm gonna get in that kind of shape. And again, I had no idea what I was doing. I did not want to take the time to do the research. If I want to be, jacked with a six pack, I got to lose more weight. That was my mentality. I was like, all right, I'm going to start working out more, and I'm going to start eating right. It actually started out as a workout obsession. And
Anorexia athletica, maybe?
Correct. Yes. So I think at like my peak of that, I was probably working out 5 times a day. So I would do 3 or 4 runs, and I would go to the gym at least twice a day. I would wake up at 2 a.m, and I would go down to the gym in my apartment complex and knock out an hour on the on the Stairmaster or an hour on the treadmill or whatever. I literally would set my alarm so I could do this. I'm doing this every day for about 3 to 6 months, and the weight's starting to come off.
What was your food intake like?
I hadn't really changed my food at this
Okay.
point. So I was still eating, it's college. You're not focused on it. You're eating pizza, you're going to the grocery store, instant mashed potatoes, whatever you can afford. Yeah. I'm not seeing the results I want. My mentality goes, okay, I'm working out like a ton. It has to be because I'm eating too much. That's when I slowly started to begin restricting what I ate. And by the end of my sophomore year, it had blown into a full on anorexia where I was restricting food to the point where I had obviously safe foods. And I remember specifically my daily intake would typically be a handful of cereal in the morning before my first class. I would have a can of tuna fish in the afternoon because it's protein. When I got home, it would be either a bag of microwave popcorn or I'd cut up half a cantaloupe. And I would cut the cantaloupe into like small little pieces. And that's for some people, that's part of their eating disorder is you eat in a way that is, you're like a bird. You're trying to make the bites as small as possible so you can trick yourself into thinking, oh, I'm eating a lot because I'm eating all these small pieces of cantaloupe.
Popcorn makes sense.
And popcorn,
too,
right, exactly. By the end of my sophomore year, I had been working out so much and so focused on the restriction, I actually flunked out of college. I skipped so many classes to go to the gym or because I wasn't comfortable being out around people. I think my GPA my sophomore year was like 0.9. It was bad. They put me on, academic probation and said, hey, you can't come back next year. And so, I'm 20 years old. And now I'm flunked out of, college. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to move back in with my parents, back to Oregon, small town of Wisconsin. And, who knows what life is going to be. And, I swallowed my pride and called my parents and said, hey, is it all right if I move back in with you guys? And I didn't really, explain why. Basically, I had told them, my grades weren't great. I don't think Minnesota is the right fit for me. I just want to be back in Wisconsin. I didn't mention anything about, what was going on with me physically. I was not aware of the fact that it was an eating disorder. Right. What I thought was, man, I just got dealt a bad set of genetic cards. God just said, hey, Dan, you're not going to be like everyone else, unfortunately. Because you'd sit there and I'd watch my friends or people that I knew and they'd eat a cheeseburger and I'd be like, man, if I eat that cheeseburger, I'm going to gain 10 pounds. But like my friend Adrian can have that cheeseburger and he's going to be fine. For me, it hadn't really kind of registered that I had a problem per se, right? I knew I was unhappy. I knew I didn't like the way I looked. I knew that I didn't like being around people because I didn't feel confident or comfortable around them because of this obsession with my physical appearance. And so all of a sudden, like I flunked out of college as well. Like, man, this is awful. Like my life is, my life sucks. And so for the next several years, so probably for, age 20 to 23, 24, I was both dealing with anorexia and trying to figure out what am I doing with my life. I was doing odd jobs, doing window cleaning. And I remember I worked at a restaurant, which for somebody who has anorexia is a very, very hard experience because you're exposed to food constantly. But it was called Fitch's Restaurant. At the end of the night, I would order the same thing every night. I would order the penne pasta with marinara sauce and mushrooms. I'd get it to go. I would go back to my parents' house. I would lock myself in my room with my to-go container. And what I would do is I would actually open the container up and I would suck the marinara sauce off the pasta and spit the pasta into the trash can and then eat the mushrooms. And that would be my dinner. And of course I would do this in the privacy of my own room. So nobody knew this was going on. Right. My family would see me come home with these to-go boxes and be like, oh, he's eating or whatever.
Eating,
right. Yeah. I did this for, 3-4 years. And
were you still training as much, like going to the gym?
No, at this point, the working out had really leveled off to the point where I barely had the energy to do anything besides cardio. I was not going and lifting weights. I was running. And that was because, again, my mind was I had to burn calories. And I just would always remember Thanksgiving was the one day of the year where I would let myself eat whatever I wanted. Okay. Thanksgiving was my favorite holiday. I love my mom's Thanksgiving dinner. But for me to rationalize that, every Thanksgiving, I would run my own turkey trot. So I would go run 12 to 15 miles in the morning. To justify my mind that I could eat today, right? And so I was remembering weighing myself in my parents' bedroom and got down to 132 pounds. Wow. And I remember
how tall are you?
I'm about 5'10".
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that number and being excited. All right, I knocked another 5 pounds off the scale, not realizing that for a 23-year-old male who's 5'10", 132 pounds is not good. That's not normal.
But in some way, it almost felt like success. Like
correct.
You could succeed at.
Exactly. Yes. And so, yeah, so for, for at that stage, I knew for me, like my life was not going in the direction I wanted. I was constantly thinking about food, constantly thinking about my appearance to the point where I literally had no real social life or interactions with anybody outside of my family, and coworkers. I wasn't going out. I wasn't going, I wasn't dating. I wasn't being social. I wouldn't do anything. I would go to my job and I would just go home and I would sit in my room, and it was a miserable experience. I didn't have a window to the world that we have now, Instagram, stuff like that. When I was in my room, it was me and the TV and my thoughts. My family was great. They were incredibly always there for me and always cared for me and loved me very, very much. But they were not aware of how severe it was. They were aware that something was wrong because they can see their son or their brother or their, wasting away. And they would make comments, around things like, "Oh, you look like really, thin. Have you been eating?" I would always have some excuse ready as to why I couldn't sit down and have dinner with my family. And I think, for them, after experiencing that for several years, and seeing me physically where I was at, I'm pretty sure they knew something was wrong. And it's not that I don't think they wanted to bring it up and address it, because we've never been a family that way. Like, our family has never been the type to like have honest conversations with each other. I think we've gotten a lot better at it now as we've gotten older and more mature. But it wasn't really something that we would do as a family. We're very passive in that regard.
Yeah.
And so I just remember kind of the aha moment of, all right, like my life is now spiraled to the point where if I don't get a hold on this, who knows how much time I have left. Was I had gone to visit my brother. He's in the Air Force and he was stationed in Valdosta, Georgia. And it was the summertime, Georgia summers. It's 90 degrees, it's humid, it's swampy. And I remember being there with him and I am freezing cold. My fingernails are blue. My lips are blue. I'm wearing 3 layers of clothes. I've got like sweatpants on. I'm wearing, I got 2 t-shirts and a sweatshirt, and it's like 95 degrees out. My thought was, okay, there's something physically internally wrong with me. I must have a disease or something. I should probably go see the doctor when I get back home.
Right, trying to find some
Exactly. Again, not thinking that I'm doing this to myself via starvation. More so like there's got to be something wrong with me physically. There has to be like a disease or something like that. So I go back to Wisconsin and I tell my mom, like, I think I need to see a doctor. And she's like, okay. So we go see this doctor and I sit in the office with him for like 10, 15 minutes. And he doesn't ever ask me about anything about food related or anything like that. He's just asking about the symptoms and like why you here and stuff like that. And they run some blood work. I did the follow up about a week later and he sits me down and he goes, I got to be honest with you. We did the test. There's nothing physically wrong with you in terms of like diseases or anything like that.
Yeah.
But based on what you're telling me and based on what I'm witnessing with you, I think you have an eating disorder.
Good on him, because
right.
You know what I mean? It's still where doctors will be like, and won't touch it.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, I had never even in my mind considered, well, I have an eating disorder. So I'm like, come on, man. Like, eating disorders are for like 12-year-old girls. Like, I'm a 23, 24-year-old guy. Like, no way. He brings, this sheet out and he shows me the sheet said 21 signs of starvation. And I go through this and I realize as he's going through this and telling me all the things, I realize I'm showing 20 of 21 signs of starvation. And, he tells me, here's the situation. Like, if you don't change this now, like, you are going to die. Your body cannot sustain this level for much, much longer. It was a miracle I could sustain it for that long. But, I would estimate I was eating 500 to 700 calories a day most days. I think it's only through the grace of God that I didn't die during the years that I was doing that. Usually if you have an eating disorder, it's not something where like you struggle with it for 3-4 years. You struggle with it for a year, and then your body basically says, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. And that's when people have the aha moment of like, I either change, or because it is the most deadly mental health disorder, they die, or they, sadly they commit suicide, whatever that, that outcome is. So for me, the fact that I went through it for 3 or 4 years and managed to like not get to that point, I think again, just it speaks to the grace of God that he kept me alive. And so finally, now confronted with this, my mom obviously found out, my dad, my parents and everything. And so they sat me down and said, hey, here's the situation. We want to help. You got to acknowledge you have this. And I was still kind of in like a level of denial. I was like, yeah.
I was gonna say, did you take it at face value when you saw that 20 of 2021? Or were you still trying to justify?
I was still trying to justify. I think I was still trying to come up with, gosh, I don't know, like eating disorder again. Like I'm not a 12-year-old girl. And so that can't be that. Like, I know what he's saying and he's a doctor. I remember my mom said like, all right, I want to like take you to a food therapist and like have you sit down with a therapist who like specializes in eating disorders. Reluctantly, I was like, all right, fine. And I remember I met with the therapist, and I just didn't click with the therapist. I'd never gone to therapy before either. And I just remember like leaving the very first session being like, I really didn't enjoy that. Like, I don't want to do that ever again. But I left there going, okay, I got to do something. I can't continue down this path. Like,
Was that self-motivated or because the family was like, you need to do something?
I think it was mostly self-motivated.
Good.
I mean, my family is incredibly supportive. Have no idea what I'm going to do with my life, but I just knew I was incredibly unhappy and was not excited about where my life was going.
So was that the moment?
That was the aha moment as I said, okay, I got to fix this. And two things got to happen. One, I got to get my life back on track. So like, I'm going to go to community college. I'm going to get my grades back up. I'm going to finish my degree. But I also said, I need to kick this food thing. I need to figure this out. Whether or not I acknowledge I have an eating disorder at this point is one thing, but I have to figure this part out. And so what I decided to do was fight this with knowledge is what I'm going to do. I am going to read and research as much as I can about how the body works, what nutrition and how that works with the body. I wanted to learn more about how to work out right and that the fitness aspect and the wellness aspect of it. And again, like my thought all along was not that I had an eating disorder. It was I'm just created differently. My body just operates differently from everyone else's, and I can't fix this. But when I started to read, and I was getting my hands on anything I could get, I was getting like all the, the books about the human anatomy. I was getting every fitness magazine you could get, Men's Health, Men's Fitness, whatever it was. And I would read them cover to cover. And that's when I started to realize, you know what? I'm not actually different. Now, genetically, we all are very, very different, but at our core, the human body is designed relatively the same way. And so starting to peel back some of these layers was, okay, I'm not actually different. I'm just treating myself horribly.
I have two brothers, and they've always talked about wanting to be bigger.
I've reflected on this a lot. And what the ideal body type for a man in 2001 is very different than what we see
That's
today.
true.
If you think about the celebrities of the late 90s, early
Abercrombie
2000s,
jeans.
it was a lot of skinny guys.
Yeah.
There wasn't the focus on muscles and aesthetics. It was skinny.
Abs.
Exactly. Skinny, but like, and
Abs
what,
and biceps.
exactly. But
Yeah.
it wasn't even biceps. I mean, you think about Leonardo DiCaprio in Titanic.
That's true.
He was the heartthrob of my generation, and he was
Yeah.
just a rail thin, skinny guy. No muscle on him at all.
That's true.
For me, that's what I was looking at. That is the body type that women want. That's the body type that I want. I just want to be skinny. I wasn't even thinking about muscles or anything like that. Obviously, today it's very different.
Right.
Today we are bombarded with every guy wants to be bigger. I couldn't agree more. I think it was just the timing of when I went through mine is just different than kind of what we look at as the ideal body type today. Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like you were bullied or anything either. So this was very just kind of your kind of self-awareness of your place in the world and how you were fitting into it.
Yeah, I will say this. I do feel incredibly fortunate for having dealt with this issue when I dealt with it, because I cannot imagine how hard it has to be for people to go through it in this day and age. Thankfully, no, I was never bullied. Again, the timing of the situation was ideal. So I didn't have to worry about the external of people bullying me and trolls online. So for me to imagine what kids or whoever's struggling with this today have to go through, I can't even put myself in that shoes. It's just got to be a nightmare.
It sounds like too you had touched on that your faith and talking to God and maybe figuring out his plan for you was big. So can you touch on kind of how faith took you through that?
Yeah. So I grew up, my dad was a minister, born and raised Christian. And, I think when I got to college, that was the first time I stopped really going to church on a consistent basis. Growing up, my dad's a minister. We would go to church every Sunday. We'd have our fellowship with our, community and everything. I kind of like let it drift to the side. I let my faith become something that for me became internal versus I'm going to be around other people who are faithful. Like I was like, oh, faith is a relationship between me and God. He doesn't take attendance. He doesn't care if I'm in church every Sunday. He doesn't care if I'm only meeting with other Christians and hanging out with Christians. And so I really kind of stopped going. I didn't go to church for 2 years when I lived in Minnesota. So I started not thinking about myself as a Christian anymore and kind of like leaning on God. I wasn't praying as much, wasn't going through any of that. And I really just kind of took all that and kind of put it aside because all I could think about was eating and working out and how I looked. That was it. It occupied my mind 24/7, which is exhausting. Think about how many thoughts you have in a given day, whatever it is. Now imagine it's just all you can think about is the same thought over and over and over
Can I
and
work
over.
out again?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, for me, I completely, I don't want to say lost faith. I don't think there's ever been a time in my life where I was like, oh, God's not real.
Yeah.
I was wrong, but I didn't focus on it. I didn't think about it. I certainly didn't look to him to help me in any
And you
way,
didn't
shape,
have
or
that
form.
community of support either.
Exactly. Right. Because I wasn't around. I wasn't taking myself into that situation, letting myself be supported by that community. I remember going back to college this time with the mentality of like, okay, I got to get my degree. That's first and foremost. I want to get healthy, so I'm going to get myself back into a point where I'm healthy. But I also want to reconnect with my faith. One of my roommates, his name is Josh. He was a huge Christian. And I just remember it was my first time being around on a consistent basis somebody who like had my faith in a very long time. That kind of like rekindled my passion and my understanding of how important this is for me. I think that was very instrumental in kind of the early, year or two of me starting to get back on the right track was, reminding myself that like I have a great heavenly father who wants to take care of me. And I don't have to do this by myself. And I can get help from him. And obviously I can get help from other people as well.
Do you still feel like you struggle with your relationship with food at all still? I mean, I know you, and so outside looking in, but do you still have that inner battle?
It's interesting. So I will say this, I don't think I have any residual battles. I think for me, thankfully, I've gotten to a point where I don't even think or worry about ever returning to that world. There is residual effect in that I still do think about fitness and food a lot, but it's not in the negative kind of, the negative connotation. It is more like this is just now a lifestyle. It's something that I've chosen. So I don't think I really kind of figured out exactly for me, anyways, what I really enjoyed about this passion for wellness and physical fitness and health until I was probably like my early 30s. And I think once I'd realized it wasn't so much the aesthetic aspect of it anymore, it was this just makes me feel good mentally was the cheat code for me. And I think once I realized like, that's what I love about this decision to commit to being as healthy and as fit as I can was kind of the turning point for me going, okay, now I really like this lifestyle. It's not a burden. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I really, really enjoy. And it's not for the aesthetics and the things and the health and stuff like that. The physical stuff is more, I would say, kind of a bonus. Whereas the mental impact is so much bigger for me. I describe the gym as my sanctuary. Like it really, really is because it is where I go to work out my stress. That's my me time. And it is just so incredibly good for me from a mental health perspective. The other thing I decided was I never wanted going forward to have my life be limited by my physical health. And especially in this country, we are not a healthy country. And
Yeah.
so there are so many people you see that, gosh, you go, man, it just looks hard. It looks really, really hard getting through life being, overweight or whatever it might be. And I never wanted to have any aspect of my life limited by, I can't do this physically because I'm either overweight or I'm too skinny or whatever it might be. And so that was kind of the foundation for me, like in my early 30s. And now it's just been the lifestyle for, a decade. Funny, I joke about this with my friends. Still to this day, I can pretty much calculate the calorie count of anything I eat, regardless of what's put in front of me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't even want to do it, but my brain just does it automatically.
Yeah, it's just like
Like I'll go to a restaurant and they'll serve me, my dinner. I look at the plate and I go, okay, like that's about 250 calories right there. That's probably 175 calories right there. 4 ounces of chicken, that's going to be about 110 calories. And I'm literally doing the math in my head.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just stop, turn off. But it just
Okay, do
does
you
it
have to catch
automatically.
yourself
Exactly.
and be
Right.
like, no, just enjoy.
Right.
I think too, what it sounds like the resources for you were your faith and then getting the correct knowledge on how to actually reach
Right.
the physical aesthetics that you wanted.
Yes.
Once you have that knowledge, then you feel empowered.
Mhm.
You're like, okay, I just have to apply this and continue. How long did it take you from that moment of, okay, I need to get a hold of all of this, go back to school, get food in order to where you feel like you really came through it? Was it a year? I think a lot of times people want to see change really quick.
Yeah.
Talk us through
5,
kind of
6
like
years.
that. Yeah.
5, 6 years. I mean, like I said, when I went back to college, I graduated college at 26. And I would say I was on the right path, but I was not yet at a healthy weight. I was not yet at a healthy, spot with food. And I still was like very much safe foods, unsafe foods was still my mentality. I was eating more calories, but I would still avoid so many foods because I'm like, oh gosh, that slice of pizza, that'll be the undoing. Like that's going to put me 20 pounds overweight. Like I'm not going to eat that. It wasn't until I was probably 32, 33 where I was like, okay, like now I really understand
I can have a piece of pizza.
I can have a piece of pizza. I can have, these foods that I see other people have. And I was in a much better place, not only with my relationship with food, but also my relationship with my body, the aspects of actually working out and stuff like that. So it definitely was a long, long recovery. I put weight on very quickly, obviously, because going from what I was eating
Yes.
to whatever.
That metabolic damage, right? People
Correct.
don't understand when
Yes.
you do that, then there's going to be the peaks and the valleys, right? As soon as you come out of that upswing wants to happen. Your body's like, yes.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And it takes time to level off.
Right. The human body is designed incredibly
survive.
well. Right. Your body says, okay, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize is when you go into that starvation mode, your body's it's going to adapt. It's going to go, okay, if I'm only eating so much, then I'm going to slow down all of the burning of all the functionality because I don't need as much food because I'm not getting as much food. And so your metabolism goes from 1,800 calories, whatever it is, down to like 900 because the body's going, well, I'm only getting 900 a day, so I don't need to be doing all this additional stuff. And so like I said, for me, it was like once I started reintroducing food and reintroducing calories, my body was like, oh man, like, thank you. Like, why? Like I've been trying, man. I've been trying to help you out here. Like, let's go. And I'm just, again, blown away by the fact that like I didn't have any long-term health effects from it either. No heart, no internal, like nothing with my lungs, kidneys, any of that kind of stuff. Again, just like a miracle in of itself that like there was not permanent damage that had been done to my internal body via kind of this eating disorder for 4 or 5 years.
Were there points in the mirror when people were like, oh, you're looking thin, where you didn't see that? And then kind of, do you still struggle with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would look in the mirror and what I would see was a fat person. I would see not
Even at like 130 pounds?
exactly. And not like, I think for me, again, I can't speak to everyone else, but for me, it wasn't like an illusion. It wasn't like I would look in the mirror and see an actual, what we would consider an obese person, right?
Right.
I would see myself, even as rail thin as I was, and go, I'm still overweight. I don't like what I see. My interpretation of my body via body dysmorphia was I'm overweight, I'm fat, I'm unhealthy, which of course could not have been further from the truth. So yes, I very much dealt with that. Today, I think it's a little bit different. I don't have body dysmorphia, but I think we're exposed to it consistently with social media and stuff. I have a lot of friends who are bodybuilders and they couldn't be more self-critical,
Yep.
And obviously you lived in this world. These are people who their whole profession, their whole sport is geared around how could I make my body look as perfect as possible based on this ideal from the judge's perspective, right? And so for most people, they would look at these bodybuilders and go, that guy is a superhero. That person is a cartoon character.
Yeah.
They're just all muscle. There's no fat. But a lot of bodybuilders are like, oh gosh, my back is just, it's flat. I'm not getting the symmetry, the separation of this muscle doesn't look great. And they're just picking apart every aspect of their physique. And I still do that. I think everyone has, to an extent, a little bit of that inside them, regardless of how happy they are with their appearance.
Yeah.
We're always going to find something where we're like, yeah, like today, I don't really like how that looks. Man, like this, I'd like to work on this a little bit more. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me has been, reminding myself that, these thoughts and these things are like fleeting. They're not permanent. It's okay to have a bad day. A lot of my friends will come to me. They always want workout advice. And I always preface everyone who asks me questions about, my diet or my workout routine. I always preface this by telling them, I'm going to tell you everything you want to know, but I'm just going to tell you up front, this works for me. It might not work for you. It's,
Right.
So don't take this as like the Bible of like, if you go out and do this, you're going to get X, Y, Z result. Because I think, once you've unlocked what works for you, it's a really great place to be if you're focused on that kind of stuff. Because then I just joke with my friends, they got to do this for the next 30 years is just rinse and repeat. And I think a lot, in this day and age, there's so much information out there about what works, what doesn't work in terms of fitness and health and wellness, right? Like it's a cottage industry now, fitness influencers and things like that.
Which I think is what's hard for people is because you were able to do the research when it was still pretty narrow because there wasn't all the social media where
Right.
anyone can say that they know what they're talking about.
Exactly.
Where for now, if someone came up to you and said, my son or my daughter, I think, is going through this, what advice would you give someone who's on the outside of it? Or if someone came to you after hearing this, because our goal is maybe that, people who are struggling with this will need a place to start if
Yeah.
they've finally got that awareness of, I need to make a change. What would you say? I know it's different for everybody, but good couple places to start.
Yeah, great question. And I think that you hit exactly on the head is everybody's battle is unique to them. I don't think there is a universal, path forward, right? Same thing with, there's no universal health plan, where if there was a universal system in terms of what your diet was, your workout was, that worked for everybody, everyone would just follow the same playbook. And so I think it's the same thing with recovery. It really depends on what is the root issue, what are you specifically dealing with, what led to it, what triggers you now, like what keeps you in this battling this disease. I think once you kind of know that foundational stuff, then it's a matter of, okay, now seeking out the information. You want to seek it from the most credible sources you can. And I'm going to hate to say this, it's not going to be on Instagram. It's not going to be on Facebook. It's not going to be on TikTok. It's going to be in medical journals. It's going to be with professionals. It's not going to be the people who look the way you want to look. It's going to be the people who did the work to learn the knowledge, right? So, it's not going to be the fitness influencer who has the six-pack abs and the muscles and stuff like that. Because to your point, that person is probably not a doctor. They might not have gotten their degree in kinesiology. They just happen to look really, really good, and they ended up being able to build a business online by being able to tell people how I work out, how I eat, and stuff like that.
Or they're doing it in a way that isn't healthy long term, like longevity, right? You said for the next 30 years, rinse and repeat. Some of those things that those people are telling people to do, you cannot do because it will cause those kidney issues and things like that. People look at you now and if they just saw your Instagram, right? But they don't realize that that's been a 20-year journey to get to this level of lean and routine, where they look at someone, they're like, okay, I want to look like that in 3 months, where it's like, this took decades to dial in over time. So either the shortcut or buying into the long road.
Right. Yep. When I had the opportunity to battle my disease and disorder, the time of when I got to do that, again, we're just different as a society. We didn't have instantaneous everything back in 2001, 2000, 2003. Even today, it is not going to be, I'm going to wake up and like a week from now, I'm going to be better. It's going to take some time. And I think that's even something that discourages a lot of people from even choosing to try to be healthy, because it takes time to be healthy. It's an investment. And a lot of people don't want to put in that time, or they're tricked because of what we see online and stuff like that. And they're thinking, okay, it's going to take me 30 days. And so those people start this, and at the end of those 30 days, they're not happy. And it sets them back even more because like, I just did the 30-day challenge. I committed to it. I did everything they told me to do. And I don't look how I want to look.
People do this 30-day challenge and then they give up because they can't buy into the long road. They're like, nope, it's just me. I have a terrible metabolism.
Yep.
Or, oh, I'm never going to be able to look like that. It's my genetics. I've always been husky, right? And they just let that be the lie that stops them from being able to buy into getting more knowledge, dialing it in for themselves, and being able to actually reach a better space, but also buying into that this is going to be years.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it is literally a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year commitment. If you want that lifestyle, and it's not for everybody, and that's fine. And I always tell this to people. For me, find something that you enjoy. If you're worried about your health and wellness, find something about your health and wellness that you really enjoy. It could just be going for a walk. It could be you really enjoy doing yoga or whatever. It's something that just gets you excited to do a little bit of the work, right? Because I think that's the other thing that people don't realize. It is a very conscious choice. If you want to be fit and healthy, it's hard in this day and age. It is hard. You have to put the time and the investment in, both not only in terms of like actually going to the gym and stuff like that, but the time and investment of doing your research, understanding what you're eating, what you're not eating, tinkering, kind of using yourself as a guinea pig and stuff like that. It's even harder in this day and age to kind of make that time because we just don't have as much time as we used to have. And so to make that investment, it comes down to for each individual, like, what do you really want? Like, what's going to actually make you happy mentally that's related to your physical wellness?
You said find something that you enjoy. And I think a lot of people understand now that a great outfit if you look good. So a great pair of athletic gear that gets you excited to go to the gym because you like how you look. And you have started an athletic apparel brand that is based in mental health. So let's talk about packs a little bit.
Yes. Oh gosh, I want to say it's probably 3-4 years ago. My best friend, she is a professional bodybuilder, and we've been friends, 8-9 years. We met at Gold's Gym in Venice, and we hit it off. For about 3 or 4 years, had always been talking about, wouldn't it be great if we could also have a side hustle that was in the fitness space? Because we're really passionate about it. Obviously we both live the same lifestyle. Both of us chose this lifestyle for very similar reasons. We realized we need this lifestyle for our mental health because it's our way of managing so much of the challenges we have mentally. We really bonded over that. And so we had talked about it, like what's something we can do, like an activewear brand, because there's a playbook. All the information's out there on how can you launch an activewear brand, stuff like that. But what really drove us to making the decision to actually do it was there's really not an athletic wear brand that really focuses on connection between your physical health and what it can actually do for you for your mental health. And keep in mind, this is like 2022, 2023. We're coming out of the pandemic. And I think for the very first time in our country's history, mental health is now at the forefront. The curtain's been pulled back. And what used to be something people were ashamed of is now something that like everyone is fully aware of. Exactly. It became, I don't want to say the hot thing to talk about, but it became more socially normal to discuss your mental health challenges. Wouldn't it be great if there was a brand that brought the connection between physical and mental health? And we looked around, we couldn't see any brand that was really focused on that from like a branding perspective. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could help people with their mental health by getting them the knowledge and the information they need to live a better life physically, in terms of their health and wellness? And so we launched PAX. Gosh, I think we probably started in February 2023 was probably like when we really started talking about it.
Yep.
About the website. I did that kind of stuff. We got a logo made, and we launched the brand March of 2024. So we're a little bit over a year and a half. Now I'm running it myself. It's just me. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a challenge.
Yep.
It's hard, but yeah, PAX it's been 18 months since we went live.
You're sporting your
I am,
PAX
yes.
now?
I mean, we started very small. I think that's another thing is I've learned through this whole process, is especially with activewear, people are very particular. People have things
Yes.
they like, but they don't like. They're very brand loyal. I think a lot of people make the assumption that like everyone who starts an activewear brand just, they got a lot of money or they got investors. And I'm like,
Yeah.
nope, it's me.
Yeah. Self-funded.
Exactly. I got my garage. My garage is filled with leggings and sports bras and shorts and shirts. I do all the shipping. I do all the customer service, all the Instagram, all that kind of stuff. It's been a fun journey. It has definitely been a lot more failures than successes. But at the same time, I've met so many amazing people through the process. I think that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the brand and the messaging is how many people I've connected with or met through the brand that then open up to me and share their mental health story. And so that's been really cool to see is just seeing people connect over that. And as I said, when we launched the brand, I think what I really wanted the brand to represent is like when you see somebody in PAX, that's an advocate for you from a mental health perspective.
Right. If someone's in a PAX logo, that's maybe someone that you could approach and be like, hey, can you teach me how to do this?
Right. I mean, PAX means peace in Latin. I remember being like, there's got to be a cool Latin word that like is short, sweet, to the point, but like represents what we're looking for. And I remember the first thing I Googled was like fitness words for Latin.
Yeah.
It's like something stupid like that. And one of the very first entries that came up was PAX. And I was like, oh, it just means peace in Latin. I was like, that's it.
And you said the gym is your sanctuary. So
Exactly.
That's where you're
Like
at peace. It just kind of fit.
It really fit. And it was short. It was sweet. The X is like unique and from branding.
Great from,
Exactly. For the logo and stuff.
Makes the logo great.
Yeah. So it worked out well.
I love it. And the Latin piece, you are someone who enjoys a lot of travel.
Yes.
So we've talked about overcoming your battle with anorexia, creating a brand, kind of rebuilding your life. Let's talk about your love for travel a little bit.
I grew up in rural Wisconsin. When you grow up in rural Wisconsin, the world is a very small place. You don't think about traveling internationally. A lot of people, their vacation is we're going to go to Florida. We're going to go to Hawaii. We're going to go to, whatever it might be. And so I never had this intense desire to like travel the world. I actually remember this specifically. There was a girl that I was dating very, very briefly. And like after 3 or 4 dates, it kind of fell apart. And I asked like, why don't you want to like date anymore? She goes, honestly, because like you have no interest in traveling. She's like, I love traveling. You don't even want to leave the country. And I remember I was like, yeah, because I can see the Eiffel Tower on TV. I don't need to experience it in person. Why would I want to waste my money on
Oh my gosh, that mindset there to who you are now.
Night and day. And so I decided, I turned 30 and I was like, I want to do something unique for my after turning 30. I'm going to do it. I'm finally going to travel. I'm going to go overseas and I'm going to do it by myself. I'm going to do a solo trip. I think the reason I chose Thailand was I Googled best beaches in the world. And there's a beach in Thailand called Maya Beach. And it's famous because of the movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. I remember that movie growing up.
Leo just comes back around.
Everything comes back to Leo. And so I was like, all right, that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to Phuket, Thailand. I'm going to go to this Maya Beach or whatever. So I booked the trip. I'd never been on a plane flight longer than 5 hours. The flight from San Francisco to China is 13 and a half hours. So I've never been on a plane this long before. I remember flying East China Airlines, and this is my first real exposure to like the outside world. Again, there's a lot of culture here in the United States. I think we're very thankful to live in a country where we do get exposed to a lot of different cultures and things like that. But until you leave this country and see it like elsewhere, you really haven't experienced the world or culture in that way. You get off the plane, I get to my hotel, um, and I go out into, Thailand for the very first time, and I'm just in awe of how different it is than anything I've ever seen or experienced before. Like the culture is different, the people are different, the scenery is different. The world is a huge place. Oh my gosh, like this is beautiful. Like I've seen beaches in Florida. This is like the creme de la creme of beaches. And I remember I got back from that trip and I told myself, I got to see as much of this world as possible. Like God created this amazing planet and I've seen so little of it. And just from that moment on, I said, okay, I got to get to as many countries. I got to do as much travel as I can. And that became an intense passion of I just need to go and see amazing things and experiencing amazing things in this world. I've also developed this intense passion for going places that are a little bit off the beaten path. I've done the Romes and the Parises and you see the landmarks and stuff like that. But then
the ones that you gotta hit.
exactly right. The ones that everyone knows. But then I've also gone to places like Mauritius, which is an African country in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And less than 4,000 Americans go there every single year. This is awesome. Why wouldn't I want to experience this? Or
Why
Malta?
does nobody know about this or talk about
Right,
it?
exactly. It is just one of those things. I find so much joy and peace when I travel. Being able to experience different cultures, see all these things. And one of the things I love, and it happens every time I travel, because I do a lot of solo travel. I very rarely travel with anyone.
I was going to hit on that. A lot of people don't see the world because they're afraid to go by themselves.
Exactly. And I will say this, the biggest thing I realized was, it is not scary at all. I wouldn't tell you to go your first solo trip to go to like, the Sudan maybe or whatever, right? But like do something like go to Rome by yourself. You're going to be fine. A lot of their economy is driven by travel.
Right.
They're going to do everything they
want
can.
You there.
They want you there. They want you happy. They want you to have a great time because that's what drives their economy in a lot of ways. But what I think with regards to the solo travel, one of the great things is you get to see just how different the world is in terms of what people prioritize and what's important to them when you go out of the countries. I could not be more thankful that I live and grew up and have been able to live in what I would consider the greatest country in the world, which is the United States. However, there are a lot of issues we have in this country in terms of like what we actually value. We are a culture of we live to work, we don't work to live. And one of my favorite things going internationally is you get exposed to these societies and these cultures where you are not defined by what you do for a living or how you look. You're defined by who you are and how you treat people. And I've met so many people when I travel, but no one I feel like has ever asked me, what do you do for a living? In the US, what's one of the first, you meet a new person, what's one of the first two questions you ask them? So what do you do for work?
Yeah. Where do you live? What do you do for
Right.
work?
What do you do for work? Right. Over there, they don't care. It doesn't come up. You don't talk about what you do for work or what, all that kind of stuff. I was just in Malta and it was amazing. I love to people watch when I travel. It's like one of my favorite things to do when I solo travel is sit at a cafe, order a cappuccino, and just take in the people. And you just see all these people who are just engaged and in the moment, being thankful with who they are and living their life.
And how cool it just kind of put this together because you said when you travel, you're at peace. And the brand that you built means peace.
Right.
In Latin.
Exactly. Yeah.
What a cool tie-in. So before we go, at the end of every episode, we ask our guests, what are you currently going all in on right now?
Ooh. Oh, this is a great question. For me, I am currently going all in on trusting God's plan. And I think this is something that I have been getting more at peace with I have to remind myself that my plan is, in my mind, sounds pretty great, but his plan is perfect, is God's plan. And he knows what he's doing. And so I just need to trust that he's working behind the scenes, executing his plan, and I'm kind of along for that journey, and I need to enjoy that ride wherever it goes. So it's kind of like taking my hand off the wheel for the first time.
That's amazing. Can't wait to see where God takes you next.
Same.
If you or someone you love is struggling with an eating disorder, whether that's anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, body dysmorphia, or disordered eating in any form, please reach out for help. You can contact the National Eating Disorder Association helpline at 1-800-931-2237. Again, that's 1-800-931-2237. Or visit nationaleatingdisorders.org to chat with someone who understands. You're not alone, and healing is possible. This information will also be linked in the show notes.
Side effects of listening to this podcast may include spontaneous personal breakthroughs, increased confidence to do hard things, and occasional uncontrollable inspiration. If these symptoms persist, congratulations, you're officially all in. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, or substitute professional advice or medical guidance. Always consult your physician, therapist, or qualified provider before making changes to your wellness, nutrition, fitness, or mental health routines. Thank you for joining us on the All-In Wellness Approach. For more information on the AWOL Collective, upcoming episodes, or to connect with our community, visit awolcollective.com or follow us on socials. That's AIWA collective.com. See you next time.